Hi there, my name is Ethan. I am 30 years old and live a relatively calm life in a little town in Virginia. I suppose you could say that things have always been rather uncomplicated for me. I work as an HVAC technician, live in a modest two-bedroom home, and like a community where everyone still greets you. People here wave from their automobiles, borrow one another's tools, and always offer a helping hand when needed. It's the kind of environment that makes you feel safe and familiar, and I've always been the one that is willing to pitch in. I do anything I can to help others, whether it's carrying groceries, fixing a leaky pipe, or mowing the yard for an elderly neighbor. Nothing fancy, just plain, honest living. Mark and Claire Harper reside across the street from me. I have known them for years. They always appeared to be the perfect couple. The house was large and well kept, and the yard looked like it had come straight from a magazine. We weren't best friends, but we'd exchange pleasantries, wave during holidays, and maybe talk every now and then. The day began like any other. When I returned home about 5:30 p.m., I went to grab my toolbox to replace a weak cabinet hinge in the kitchen, only to realize I was missing a special wrench. I could have put it off until the weekend, but I detest leaving projects half-finished. So I decided to head across the street and ask Mark if he had one I could borrow. As I strolled up their front path, something seemed off. The porch light was shining, but the drapes were drawn tight. I pressed the doorbell and waited. No one arrived. Just as I turned to leave, the door creaked open and there was Claire. I paused in my tracks. Her eyes were puffy and red, mascara smeared down her cheekbones. Her hair was tangled and she was wearing an oversized cardigan, as if she'd thrown it on without thinking. She appeared absolutely ruined. "Claire, are you all right?" I inquired, caught completely off guard. She tried to pull herself together and gave me a small smile that faded almost immediately. "Ethan, hello. I was not expecting anyone," she said. I paused, my brain scrambled. Should I still ask about the wrench? No way, that would be tone-deaf. "Sorry," I murmured. "I was going to ask to borrow a wrench, but it can wait. Are you okay?" Her eyes filled up again. "No," she replied gently. "I really am not." Something in me knew I couldn't simply walk away from that. She appeared to need someone, anyone, and I happened to be the one standing there. "I mean, if you want to talk, I can stay," I said hesitantly, "or I can go if you prefer to be alone." She shook her head slowly, wiped her face, and moved away. "You are welcome to come inside." I nodded and walked inside. Their typically clean home seemed odd, heavy, as if melancholy had soaked into the walls. The lighting was faint. A half-empty box of Kleenex rested on the coffee table. There was a half-full wine glass next to an open bottle. Claire motioned me to sit. I took a seat, trying not to disrupt the precious serenity surrounding us. She sat across from me, hands gripped tightly. "I kicked Mark out," she said unexpectedly, breaking the silence like glass. I said nothing at first. My heart fell. I would never have imagined they had any problems, let alone something so terrible. "I've known for years," she said, hatred in her voice, "about the cheating, the lies. I ignored it. I thought maybe I could make things better, but today I just couldn't anymore." I bent forward and rested my elbows on my knees. "I'm very sorry, Claire. I had no idea." She let out a bitter laugh and wiped another tear from her face. "Nobody did. I put on the act, the adoring wife, the immaculate home, and the ideal marriage. It was all made up. I simply didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to feel like a failure." Her words cut deep. I had no idea what to reply, but sometimes silence is more powerful than words. "You're not a failure," I said quietly after a time. "You stood up for yourself. That takes guts." She looked at me for a long time as if she was trying to make herself believe it. "You're a good man, Ethan," she murmured softly. I've been dragging this around for a long time. Now that it's out, I feel numb. Without thinking, I stretched out and gently placed my hand on hers. You don't have to go through this alone, I said. I'm here. She gripped my hand strongly. It was the first glimmer of life I'd noticed in her since I went through the door. We sat there for what seemed like hours, talking about everything, pain, betrayal, and what it means to trust someone. She said that Mark had been unfaithful virtually since the beginning, how she had caught him twice but remained, expecting he would change. I gave him everything, she murmured, barely above a whisper. He gave me nothing but falsehoods. You deserve better, I told her, strong and clear. You deserve to be treated correctly. Her expression relaxed slightly. Do you honestly think so? I do, I replied. I mean it. The clock struck midnight and the wine bottle was almost empty. I rose up slowly and stretched a little. I should definitely get going. It's getting late. She stood up and walked me to the door, but then stopped. I could see her struggling with something, as if she was torn between wanting to speak and keeping it inside. Finally, she looked directly into my eyes and murmured softly, "You can stay if you want." It took me off guard. Her voice was subdued and harsh, with no hint of flirtation or romance. She did not want to spend the night alone. I gave a slight nod. All right, I will stay. She led me back to the couch where I sat next to her. She leaned lightly against my shoulder as if it were the only thing keeping her steady. Minutes turned into hours. Her breathing gradually slowed and she fell asleep against me. I sat there in the dark, wide awake, peering into the silence of the room, knowing deep down that the night had changed something between us. Morning light filtered in through the half-closed curtains. I blinked, realizing that I hadn't moved all night. Claire was still there, sleeping on my shoulder, breathing quietly and peacefully. I carefully moved my arm so that I wouldn't wake her, and I sat still, taking in the silence of the house around us. The weight of last night lingered in the air, dense and unspoken. After a time, Claire moved next to me. Her eyes slowly opened, and for a moment she appeared perplexed. Then it struck her where she was. She pulled back slightly, tucking her hair behind her ear and murmuring, "I apologize." "Do not be," I said gently. "You simply needed someone." She stood up with a faint, exhausted smile on her face. "I should brew some coffee." I followed her into the kitchen, which seemed unusually clean given what had happened the night before. She moved silently, almost automatically, pouring coffee grounds into the filter and refilling the pot with water. I didn't say anything, simply watched and gave her room without pressing. When the coffee was finished, we sat down at the small kitchen table. The only sounds were the clock ticking and the refrigerator humming in the background. She finally exclaimed, "I can't believe you stayed," gripping her cup with both hands as if it were the only warm object in the room. "I couldn't just walk out," I responded, "and you shouldn't have had to endure that night alone." She looked into her coffee for a moment. "Mark would have left." "Actually, he did leave," I said. "He ran away whenever things became tough." I slumped back in my chair, unsure what to say. "You deserve someone who stays," I remarked after a pause. "Someone who doesn't flee the moment things get tough." She let out a deep sigh and shook her head. "I'm not even sure what I deserve anymore. I thought I had everything worked out, you know. The home, the marriage, the entire future. Now it feels like everything has crumbled." I nodded slowly. Sometimes the components must come apart in order to make way for something better. She gave a wistful smile. "You sound like my therapist." I laughed a little. "I guess I've suffered enough pain to pretend wisdom." That took her off guard. "You really? You constantly seem so together." I shrugged. I was once engaged. She called it off 6 months before the wedding, said she wasn't prepared. I thought I'd never recover, yet life keeps tugging you forward even when you aren't prepared. We sat quietly for a while, understanding each other as only two wounded people can. After finishing her coffee, she looked toward the door. Want to take a walk? I just need to get out of here for a while. The late morning air was crisp but not unpleasant. We went down the calm neighborhood streets, passing familiar homes and well-kept lawns. Strangely, nobody waved this time. It was as if the world knew she needed the distance. I had forgotten how it felt to breathe fresh air, Claire remarked quietly while strolling near me. I've been caught in my own thoughts for far too long. I looked at her and observed something unusual about the way she carried herself, as if a layer of tension had finally been released. You are stronger than you give yourself credit for, I told her. She gave a faint, unsure smile. That's kind of you. As we walked, the talk shifted to lighter topics. Movies we enjoyed, awful takeout orders, and old vacation misadventures. She slowly began to laugh again. At first, it was silent and uncertain, but it ultimately got easier, freer, real. I felt myself smiling, simply looking at her. It's lovely to hear you laughing again, I said. I hadn't realized how much I missed it. I am neither, she responded. It seems like forever since I felt anything close to normal. By the time we reached the last corner back to her house, she looked different, still worn and healing, but no longer buried beneath it. At the bottom of her front stair, she looked at me. Thanks, Ethan. I don't think I've ever had somebody show up as you did. You do not need to thank me, I replied honestly. I'm simply thrilled I could be there. She stared at me with steady eyes and a little trembling voice. I've spent years surrounded by people and I've never felt so safe. I wasn't sure how to answer, but I felt it too. There was a gentle draw between us, something whispered but real. I gave her a slight nod and spoke softly. Claire, please contact me at any time. I began to turn back toward my position when I felt her hand softly wrap around my wrist. I paused and looked back at her. Do you mind staying for lunch? She inquired, her tone almost timid. I understand it's a hefty ask after last night, or I simply don't want to be alone. That struck me square in the chest, her honesty and vulnerability. It was not dramatic, simply real. Of course, I replied with a pleasant smile. I would love to. We ended up in the kitchen together, making sandwiches and joking about how poorly I butchered the tomatoes. We sat down and ate as if we'd known one another for years. The awkwardness gone, the talk flowing naturally. That's when I discovered she loved to garden. She collected antique postcards. She couldn't stand mushrooms, but enjoyed mushroom soup. The warm golden sunlight came in through the windows, and I had a peaceful realization. I did not want to leave. She didn't need to say anything. I could see it on her face. She didn't want me to leave either. It was not romantic yet. However, there was something real there, a link formed from fragmented fragments. When I eventually stood up to leave hours later, she led me to the door. Thank you again, Ethan, she whispered softly. You've no idea how much this meant. I'm here, as promised, whenever you need, I said. Walking back to my house, I had a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in a long time. My life was always simple, predictable, and it had been plenty up until now. Meeting her in the midst of her storm had already shifted something in me. I hesitated before closing my front door, taking one final look at her residence. I knew deep down that I'd be back. The next few weeks fell into a calm cadence that neither of us had anticipated. I would stop by after work to see how she was doing, sometimes just to say hello, sometimes with a coffee or a tiny bouquet of flowers from the market down the road. At first, I had no idea why I did it. It simply felt perfect. I was not attempting to impress her. I only wanted to see her smile, and slowly she did. The first time I brought her flowers, simple daisies and sunflowers, she marveled at them as if they were the first act of compassion she'd witnessed in years. "No one's ever brought me flowers just because," she murmured quietly, her eyes streaming. "Well," I said with a smile, "now someone has." Our afternoons were frequently spent on her veranda, sipping coffee or lemonade and watching life go by. We sometimes chatted about frivolous things like lousy movies, strange takeout orders, and random memories from our past. Other days, we delved into more serious topics such as regrets, heartache, betrayal, and the harm caused by believing the wrong person. Claire never tried to hide how devastated she still felt. Her smile had returned, yet something remained guarded behind her eyes. One evening, as the spring breeze rustled through the trees, I spotted her looking at her wedding band. "I keep thinking that if I take it off, it will be genuine," she whispered. I reached out, lightly brushing my fingers on hers. "You don't have to rush it," I explained. "There is no set timeline for mending." She stared at me with gentle, inquiring eyes. "You're incredibly good at it." "At what point?" I inquired, making me feel like it was safe to breathe again. Hearing her say that hit me harder than expected. I hadn't gone into her life searching for anything, but with each passing day I found myself caring more. It wasn't about appearances, but she was undoubtedly attractive. It was her fortitude, her honesty, the combination of strength and fragility, how she could make a laugh one moment and cry the next. But I also realized I needed to be careful with her heart. We stood under her front porch light one night after a lengthy stroll along the lake route. There was a pause, one of those moments that lasts too long to be casual. "Do you want to come inside?" she inquired gently. I paused, my heart hammering. I could see the inner battle in her eyes, part of her desired proximity, while another half was still terrified. "Not tonight," I replied softly. "I don't want you to believe I'm expecting anything. I am here because I care, not because I want anything from you." Relief rushed over her face, but it concealed something deeper, something scared. "You truly are unique," she whispered, "and that is what scares me." I gave her a serene grin. "Then we'll go at your pace." Over the next few days, minor changes began to appear. Without saying anything, she removed the wedding ring from her finger and tucked it away. She laughed louder, her grins lingered longer. She even made fun of me after I botched a batch of pancakes one morning. One Saturday, she asked if I might help her plant flowers in her backyard. We knelt in the earth together, laughing as we tried to save her gold and retrieve her Buddy from digging up all we had just planted. Buddy had become attached to me, always following me around like a small shadow. "I suppose Buddy prefers you to me right now," she said, teasingly brushing the dirt from her jeans. I leaned back, grinning. Could you blame him? I bring snacks. After that, we sat on the lawn, sipping lemonade and admiring our sloppy little garden creation. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered quietly. "For what?" I asked. "Thank you for making me feel human again." I reached over and delicately brushed my fingers across hers. "Claire, you have always been human. You have just been walking through hell." Our gazes locked for a time, longer than they probably should have. I could detect a glimmer of warmth in her glance mixed with reluctance. Her barriers were only partially down. I slowly drew my hand back. I didn't want to push before she was ready. Later that week, I returned home from work to find a small box waiting for me on my doorway. Inside was a coffee mug with the words, "Best neighbor ever," written in large, bold letters. There was a handwritten letter beside it. "You have done more for me in the last 2 weeks than I can put into words. Thank you for reminding me that nice people do exist. I just stood there, holding the note, and felt something quietly settle inside me. This wasn't only about friendship anymore. I could not ignore it. I cared about her in a way I hadn't allowed myself to care about anyone since my own heart was broken years before. Even so, I knew she wasn't ready to fully open the door, not yet. The next night, we sat on the couch watching old Seinfeld episodes. Buddy was cuddled up between us, snoozing softly. Claire let out a yawn and gently rested her head on my shoulder. "Is this okay?" she asked, just above a whisper. "Of course," I replied right away. "Whatever seems good for you." Her voice quivered just a little. "I have no idea where this is headed, Ethan, but I do not want you to leave." I wrapped my arm around her for safety rather than possession. "I am not going anywhere." Something changed between us at that calm moment. We weren't just two folks looking to escape loneliness. We were becoming something fresh, sensitive, and authentic. I lingered for a little longer that night, hugging her close as the TV mumbled in the background and our conversation devolved into simple gibberish. When I finally left, she stood by the door watching me walk away, her eyes warm and unsure. I couldn't take away her anguish, I knew that, but I could teach her slowly and carefully what it looks like when someone genuinely cares. As I walked the street beneath the starry sky, I found myself smiling. For the first time in years, I felt as if something good was about to begin. The next Friday, I drove into her driveway, heart racing, clutching 2 plane tickets in my hand. I spent days debating whether it was too much, too soon, or too unsafe. But in the end, I went with my intuition. Claire needed a break from it all, as something new and away from the heaviness of her daily routine. She opened the door with that worn smile that yet seemed to brighten the room. "Hey," she replied, tilting her head. "What's with that weird grin?" I held up the envelope. "Okay, I realize this seems crazy, but I bought us tickets to San Diego just 1 week. There is no pressure, just the sun, peace, and a change of perspective." She looked at me stunned. "Are you serious? Dead serious?" I nodded. "I understand you're still recuperating. However, sometimes a different location allows you to breathe again." She appeared to be about to say no. Then something changed in her face. A slow, genuine smile developed. "You're impossible, Ethan." I was joking. She truly laughed, and it brightened the room. "Yes," she said. "I'd adore that." The next morning, we boarded our aircraft. We didn't say much, but the silence between us seemed comfortable, natural, as if none of us had to fill it with words. As we landed in California, the warm air wrapped around us like a blanket. Claire drew a long breath and closed her eyes. "It feels fantastic," she said. We settled into a peaceful little boutique hotel on the outskirts of town, with mountain vistas and palm trees swinging in the breeze. Our first full day was spent exploring the local stores, visiting a vintage bookstore, and drinking iced lattes at a sidewalk cafe. I discovered myself staring at her when she wasn't looking, how her eyes lit up when she saw desert flowers blooming, and how she grinned at silly postcards. That evening, we ate dinner under string lights at a small cafe nestled amid palm trees and adobe walls. The dinner was delicious, but I barely noticed it. I couldn't stop staring at her. She seemed relaxed in a way I hadn't seen before. Later, as we walked back to the hotel beneath a starry night sky, she paused in mid-step and gazed at me. "Thank you," she murmured softly and sincerely. "You were correct. I truly needed this." "You deserve it," I said. "All of it." That week felt more like a dream than any of us had expected. Our mornings began with treks around the desert trails, only the sound of wind and calm footsteps. In the afternoons, we'd relax by the pool, sipping cold drinks, reading, or simply conversing about anything and everything in the shade. One afternoon I caught her gazing out at the scenery, her face gentle and tranquil in a way I hadn't seen before. "I never thought I'd feel peaceful again," she remarked softly. "But you gave me that, Ethan." I reached for her hand, and this time she didn't back away. Every night we'd try a new restaurant or bring takeout to our hotel and eat on the balcony. Watching the sunset behind the mountains became our calm little ritual, and something in the air between us began to move. What began as a casual friendship had evolved into something deeper, something we hadn't expressed out loud but both felt. On the 6th day, we hired bikes and rode them through the botanical gardens, twisting trails. The place was vibrant with color and sunlight. Claire paused at a patch of yellow wildflowers. She stood still and stared. "My mother adored these," she whispered softly. "She used to tell me that beauty can be found, even in the most difficult situations." I took a step closer and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "She would be proud of you." Claire flashed me a sorrowful smile. "I believe she would be, Ethan. I finally found someone who sees me. This is the genuine me, not only the polished version, not the ideal wife or woman who keeps things together." Her words struck me square in the chest. I wanted to tell her I loved her right then and there, but I kept it in. The timing was not ideal and she was still recovering. I didn't want to rush something that was becoming so genuine. Before we knew it, our final night in San Diego had arrived. We decided to take a walk along the resort's edge, where the wide desert gave way to the mountains. The sky was painted fading orange and gold, illuminating the faraway peaks. We walked silently for a bit until Claire came to a halt and turned to face me. "I had been dreading getting home," she said, "but for the first time in years, I believe I can do it thanks to you." I softly grasped both of her hands in mine. "Claire, you did it. I had the pleasure of strolling beside you as you made your way back." Her voice lowered to a whisper. "I am still terrified, Ethan. I'm scared to believe again. I'm concerned that you might leave." I carefully brushed my thumb across the back of her hand. "I am not going anywhere." And for the first time, she leaned in and kissed me. It was not an urgent matter. It was not passionate. It was kind, purposeful, and filled with calm hope. When we separated, we didn't say anything. We did not need to. Standing there under the stars, hand in hand, we both realized that this journey had altered everything. The next morning, we packed quietly, but it wasn't heavy or sorrowful. It was serene, steady, like we knew. It wasn't the end, but rather a new beginning. Claire leaned her head against my shoulder as we waited to board the plane. "Ethan," she muttered, "thank you for reuniting me with a part of myself that I thought was lost." I kissed the top of her head. "It's only the beginning," I smiled. As the plane took off, I knew what was coming next, and I was prepared. We both were. When we landed and made our way through the small airport back home, something in her changed. What was the weight she used to carry? It was lighter now. Her steps were not hurried. They were also not guarded. She had a serenity about her that I had never seen before. The ride home was fairly quiet, but the quietness between us felt comforting, easy. When we arrived, Buddy greeted us as if we had been gone a year. He ran down the hall, almost knocking Claire over with his eagerness. She laughed, dropping to her knees to hug him. And for the first time, I realized how lovely her laughter was when it was unburdened, pure, and free. In the weeks that followed, life took on a new cadence. We still went for evening walks, bought awful takeout, and spent nights watching old sitcoms or simply lying on the porch in the solace of silence. However, something was different now. There was closeness, a sense of tranquility, a knowing. We did not need to discuss it. It was simply understood. Neither of us wanted to lose what we were gradually accumulating. One night, as we walked our normal lakeside trail, she softly slid her hand into mine without hesitation. That one gesture conveyed more than words ever could. We paused at our favorite bench overlooking the water. The sky was shimmering with pinks and rich oranges, and the breeze felt soothing against our skin. Claire let out a long, languid sigh, the kind that indicates someone is finally able to breathe again. "I didn't expect to feel entire again," she murmured quietly. "You were never broken," I responded. "You were only hurting." "You have no idea what you have done for me, Ethan," she said. "I don't know how to say thank you." "You do not have to," I replied. I had known what I wanted to do for quite some time. I'd mentally rehearsed it 100 times, running through every possible outcome, and then I realized it was time. I stood slowly and turned toward her. She gazed up at me, bewildered, her face soft and inquiring. I dug into my jacket and brought out the small velvet box I had been holding since we returned from San Diego. Her eyes widened as soon as she saw it. "Claire," I began, my voice steady despite my pounding heart, "neither of us expected this. We were not looking for it. What we discovered, however, is real." I paused, scanning her gaze. "You've made me believe in love again. You've shown me what it means to care without keeping score, to stay even when things are chaotic and uncertain. I can't imagine my existence without you in it." I opened the package and found a modest, stunning diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" Claire looked down at the ring and then back at me. Her hands shook as she carefully brought them to her mouth, and tears welled up in her eyes. "I don't know what to say," she said, her voice quivering. "Then express how you feel," I kindly said. She shook her head, laughing despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. "You took me completely off guard." I grinned as my heart pounded. "I have been known to do it." Claire stepped forward, wiping her eyes. "It's been 15 years, Ethan. I spent 15 years feeling invisible in a life where I offered everything to someone who paid little attention. I honestly believed I would never be enough for anyone again. Then you crossed the street and gave me my life back." She clasped my face in her hands, her touch warm and confident. "Yes," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Yes, Ethan, I will marry you." I placed the ring on her finger while her tears poured freely. Her bright, dazzling, and life-filled smile illuminated the dying day. We hugged each other close, neither of us wanting to let go. Her head rested on my chest, and for the first time in a long time, both she and I felt utterly protected. 6 months later, we stood by the lake where I had proposed, exchanging vows in a modest private ceremony. The same bench where I had begged her to be mine had now become a silent reminder of our new beginning. Buddy, our silly golden retriever, joyfully trotted down the aisle as our ring-bearer, tail wagging furiously. Close friends and family joined us as Claire and I pledged our lives to each other beneath the gentle Virginia sky. I promised her that I would adore her on good and bad days alike, be patient while she healed, and never stop showing up. Tears streamed down her cheek as she grinned through them. "I promise to let myself be loved," she continued, her voice firm but impassioned. "Believe that this is genuine and never forget that you saved me when I couldn't save myself." When the officiant finally declared us husband and wife, I kissed her deeply and completely right there beneath that vast blue sky, surrounded by everyone who mattered. Our life together was far from perfect. There were difficult days, nights when fear crept in, times when old wounds were reopened. However, we never confronted any of it alone again. We held hands throughout the storm. We traveled. We adopted another rescued dog. We transformed her house, now ours, into a haven of laughter, light, and second chances. Evenings were frequently spent on the porch with Buddy dozing at our feet. the lake sparkling in the setting sun. Claire would put her head against my shoulder and mutter, "I never imagined I'd have this." And I would always respond in the same way, "You deserve every second of it." What we had did not originate from a flawless fairy tale. It stemmed from patience, from kindness, from believing again when it was difficult, from choosing each other when it would have been easier to walk away. That was our narrative, and everything turned out just as planned. In the quiet streets of a small Virginia town, Ethan's simple act of kindness, offering a listening ear to his neighbor Claire during her darkest hour of betrayal and heartbreak, unfolded into a profound love story that reminds us all of life's most valuable lesson. True healing and connection often bloom from patience, empathy, and the courage to stay when everything urges us to walk away. Claire, shattered by years of lies from her unfaithful husband Mark, found solace in Ethan's unwavering presence, his gentle support through tearful nights, shared walks, and a spontaneous trip to San Diego where walls finally crumbled, leading to their first kiss under starry skies. Their journey wasn't a fairy tale rush. It was built on raw vulnerability, rebuilding trust brick by brick, culminating in a lakeside proposal and a life filled with second chances, laughter with their dog Buddy, and unbreakable bonds. This tale tugs at the heartstrings, showing that after the storm of loss, love can emerge unexpectedly, teaching us to believe again, to choose kindness over convenience, and to embrace the beauty in broken pieces. It's a reminder that we're never truly alone if we open our hearts. What lessons has life taught you about love and resilience? Share your stories in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. And if this touched you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more inspiring tales that warm the soul. Let's grow this community together.